Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. Now, a few weeks back, I uploaded a bit of a controversial video where I fed my leopard geckos a pinkie each. I was called evil, cruel. People threatened to unfollow me after years of watching my channel. I was even told that because I said in a video 7 years ago that I wouldn't feed a pinkie, my views and practices should not have changed in those 7 years. Side note, if you own reptiles and your care has not changed, evolved, improved in 7 years, that's a bit of a red flag. And if you've actually been following my channel for the past few years, you will know that actually my care has changed tremendously. And to be fair, every time I do something a bit different, it gets pushback, and then give it a year and everyone's doing it and everyone's recommending it. So for example, loose substrate, people thought that was extremely wrong, killing my geckos. Using overhead heating rather than a heat mat, I'm a terrible person, my geckos aren't going to get the heat. Using a UV lamp, what are those geckos going to do? They're going to burn, they're going to go blind. And now offering a pinkie once. I'm a terrible person. So, you know, whenever we do something different, it does always get pushback. But despite all of that, I must actually say I got a lot of public and private messages of support from fellow keepers, creators, breeders, even experts in the field that reached out to me personally to be like, yeah, I do this once or twice a year. I can't believe there's actually pushback. I didn't know people were against this. It's been known for years that leopard geckos, though primarily insectivores, are opportunistic omnivores and who greatly benefit from the odd rodent, lizard or chick. So there were kind of three parties. There was those who were completely against it, and I'm a terrible person, they never want to see my videos again, who I doubt are watching this. There were some of you guys who didn't quite understand it, wouldn't do it yourself, but went, fair enough, I respect your decision, it's your animal, and I know you do your research. And then there was a load of people who said, wait, this is normal, why are people mad? So it made me realise there's a lack of understanding about it, and maybe that's my fault. Maybe I should have come out beforehand and explained what I was going to do, my decision, why I was going to offer it. To be honest, I'm not going to go into detail with this, but there was quite a big thing happening in my personal life. Not a good thing. And I didn't even honestly think about that there being a reaction. It was me feeding my geckos. I was putting up a feeding video. So yeah, but the biggest reason for me that I was going to do this is my two female leopard geckos, Gizmo and Minnie, they're 17 and 16. Gizmo was showing her age a bit. She was getting around almost like a crawl, slithery way. She wasn't holding herself upright. She can move quick when she wants to, but she just wasn't holding herself up. And when I reached out to an expert and a vet, they both actually separately recommended feeding a pinkie, and I was very reluctant. I've tried to avoid rodents, feeding rodents. Like, if you've ever seen any of my videos explaining why I wouldn't have a snake, it's because I don't want to feed them rodents. I don't want to be any part of that. But when they both recommended it, it took me a while. I had to go and do my research, read papers, looked into it, and I thought, yeah, you know what, they are actually right. And I went ahead and did it. Now, the other day, actually, Gizmo literally ran across her tank, arms up, like properly holding herself up after some prey. It was amazing to see. So whenever I think back at when that video came out and I was called evil and cruel and what I did was unnecessary, I know it was all worth it because I know my animals and I can see the benefits of just feeding one because it gives them such a boost. Now, I'm not here to convince anyone to do this, okay? Your pet, it's your decision. You do not have to do this. One person who actually did agree to talk to me about this topic was John Courteney-Smith, head of science and innovation at Arcadia Reptile, has literally written the book on reptile and amphibian nutrition. He knows leopard geckos well. If you've just put his name in Google or YouTube, you can see all his credentials. And yeah, so first of all, I wanted to ask him like the origin story of using pinkies and leopard geckos and why and how that came about.
Well, if you've been in the hobby for any length of time, you may remember that it was once very common practice to be feeding defrosted pinkie mice to your leopard geckos every 2 to 4 weeks. This was in the bad old days before we used ultraviolet lighting for leopard geckos, when we wrongly believed they were nocturnal, and sadly many suffered with metabolic bone disease. Supplementation was very hit and miss, of course, with powders. So it was felt that they could be offered pinkie mice, which they take no problem at all.
So one of the things people found was because they were frequently feeding their geckos pinkies, because we didn't have proper UV lights and they wouldn't use them with leopard geckos back then, and we didn't have the correct supplements for them, because they were eating them so frequently, too often, too much, this often led to fatty liver disease. So I think that might be why when I said I'm offering my gecko one pinkie, everyone was like, they're going to get fatty liver disease. It's kind of become synonymous because of this really bad reputation of like how people used to feed their leopard geckos pinkies back in the day. Now, as I said in my original video, and as John will explain, pinkies, it's not an occasional treat like a waxworm or a Morio worm. It's just like a once or twice a year thing. It's really spread out. So this isn't something you're going to commonly offer your leopard gecko.
The addition of a pinkie mouse into the diet, which is low in fat, high in protein, has vitamin and mineral reserves within it, is actually wild-like. It does replicate the wild diet. They can digest it. It can be a positive thing for a fit and healthy animal. We wouldn't suggest this if the animal had liver problems or a tendency to obesity.
Now, there was some pushback because we always kind of read that leopard geckos are insectivores, and for the most part, that is their primary diet, okay? But, like, seasonality, when they need to, when they come across a nest-fallen chick, or a baby leopard gecko, or even the tail of the loser out of the fight of two males, they will eat it, right? They're opportunistic omnivores. They will eat it, they can process it, okay? So some people even said they didn't think the geckos would be able to swallow the pinkie. The pinkie's actually really tiny. I was surprised, and it went down easier than a Morio worm. They didn't think the body would be able to digest it. The poops were no different from when they eat insects. Even I thought it might come out a bit bigger. No, it processed it completely normal. And I think that's what puzzles me, because this is what they'd eat in the wild. On occasion, it's been documented, it's been witnessed, their body clearly processes it, and most reptiles, after all, are opportunistic omnivores.
It may be shocking to some of you. Leopard geckos are highly opportunistic omnivores that are highly insectivorous. And feeding a pinkie mouse within a regulated and sensible feeding regime can be beneficial, within reason, and as long as a vet has not given you a reason not to for your particular animal.
John has written and published a number of incredibly interesting books that I have read, I've enjoyed, I would highly recommend, and he even covers leopard geckos specifically in a few of them.
I did cover this subject in the book 4 in the series, Fire, where you can read more about that, and the papers which cite the stomach contents and the observed feeding behaviour of leopard geckos in the wild.
And I think that's a key thing. When doing research, we really need to look at the evidence from the wild, because it's super fascinating. Even the social structures of leopard geckos, this isn't something I feel we could safely and effectively replicate in a little vivarium in our house. I think if you had a large area, like in a zoo, or you had an entire room for a group of leopard geckos, you could try to replicate it. Obviously, it'd end up as a breeding project. But when you read about these animals, and I would hope, as you see, as my care's evolved and how people keep leopard geckos now compared to, say, when I started my channel, when calci sand and red lights were a super common thing in a 10-gallon tank, I hope we continue to improve our care. I hope people continue to look at the wild for answers. You never want to become that stagnant keeper that says, I've been doing this for X amount of years, so I'm sticking to it. I really didn't mean to shock, offend, or disappoint anyone. I have offered my geckos a variety of prey over the last few years to increase their physical and mental enrichment, as well as increase dietary variety. So I guess for me, offering a pinkie, I just didn't think people would be that surprised. And I think there are still a lot of myths that get regurgitated in the reptile hobby that really need debunking. So, don't believe everything you read in one pamphlet or what someone says on a TikTok video. do research, keep an open mind, and look to the wild for the answers. If you want to see more from John, he will be doing an Ask Arcadia over on Arcadia Reptiles channel, which are also linked below, and they're going to be talking about supplements, so that might be something to interest you. But thank you for watching, guys, and goodbye.